I personally think that a founding team has to have 4 competences.
Mm.
One is business in general, right? Like somebody who knows how to build a business. Then you have somebody who's good in business development, right? Sales. Somebody who's not an introvert but knows how to start and sell products. The third one is technical, right? So CTO style person who can build the technology that is required to build this product. And then the fourth one for me is always a user experience person, because even if it's B2B, the user experience is extremely important. And that's something that you want in your core product, because that user experience person also in the beginning can help with the validation, with the direction, with the strategy of the product. It should be, in my point of view, a part of the, or at least from the founding team, that they, with that knowledge of building that product from the ground up, won't leave that easily.
Hello, welcome to Tiny Dragon, where we dive deep into tech startups mastering product market fit, even in the most unfamiliar markets. I'm your host, Elaine. Join us as we dive deep into the heart of tech startups, uncovering the secrets of how tech startups found their product market fit, turning complex insights into actionable strategies for entrepreneurs and tech enthusiasts alike. Welcome to Tiny Dragon, and today our episode we have Jeffrey Boer here with us. So Jeffrey, I knew you back many years ago. I remember you first started Grayscale, you were doing consulting, and then the next time I knew you were starting startups and then involved in Founder Institute. And then eventually, like you're now like a VC, and you were also training up tech startups in India Accelerator. So I know you're stationed in Hong Kong. Why don't you give us the full background about how you got started in the startup space and how you help these startups get to product market fit?
Okay. First of all, thank you for having me, Elaine. Great to be here. Honored to be one of your guests. The full background, I don't know how long you have, but that's probably a 5-hour talk. But a quick background is that born and raised in the Netherlands, set up multiple businesses throughout the years. I would say 7 businesses on 3 continents. I set up businesses in Europe, I set up businesses in Asia and in North America. Most of them failed. Some of them went okay-ish, and like some of them went pretty well. I've been an entrepreneur almost all my working life. I only had like a salary slip for probably 15% of my working career. I've always been responsible for my own income. And especially when it comes to building products or building services, that's always what my interest was and what I've always done, because I'm originally by education a mechanical engineer, but a commercial mechanical engineer. And as technical people can build something, but you cannot sell it, or salespeople can sell something, but it's technically not viable to make. And on that bridge, that's where my expertise lies, and that's always almost where all my working experience is in, right? Sometimes jokingly call it, if I have to narrow it down to one sentence, is I manage expectations from both sides, because I've also, throughout my working experience, I've been on both sides of the table. I've been the client, I've been the supplier, I've been the founder looking for investment, and I've been the investor. Right. I've been the product builder, but I'm also been the people who are looking for a product. Quite often I've seen those sides, and then doing that for on 3 continents, really gave me a good perspective on the challenges of building products or building services on for different kind of audiences.
Great. So those are 2 themes we want to focus on. One is how do you help tech startups find product market fit? And then the other theme is like when they go to a foreign market, and with your experience, you're in Asia, Europe, now you're like coaching India startups, like how does culture come into a factor and how challenging that is, right? Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. If a product works in one market, doesn't per definition mean it works also in another market. It could be, but then quite often you have to localize, and localization is quite often overlooked. And there are some very interesting use cases there that I've always been following. Just out of common interest, that really shows that localization could make or break a product.
Maybe first, let's step back a little. Like, why did you choose to be in Hong Kong, coming from Netherlands?
Hong Kong is a great place, right? Hong Kong is home for us. We moved here a little bit over 12 years ago.
Yeah.
We technically moved here for the work of my wife, but we only came here for 3 years, and after more than 12 years we're still here.
Yeah. I know a lot of those people.
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah, like it is a transition city. That means that every 3 to 4 years there is a flush throughout your friend groups, that people that are coming here for only 3 or 4 year contracts then leave, and of course that's normally a little bit more organic. They don't leave all in the third year, and then people are coming and going in that sense. But no, it is a very interesting city, because probably not a lot of cities in the world that have so many people coming in and out from different areas. Of course, mostly finance here in Hong Kong, but still, right? Before I moved to Hong Kong, I didn't know people in Mexico. I only know a few people in America. Now, like if I go there, I can probably do, I don't know, a round trip and meet every evening somebody else that I already know, because I met them here in Hong Kong, right? So it's a great place also to grow your network, but also to come into contact with people that you normally never would have met, even if you travel to the countries where they're originally from.
Interesting. Yeah. And what surprised me was you were running the Open Web Collective with startups focusing on the India market while you're in Hong Kong. So that was another surprise. Like, why India?
Yeah, it is interesting in the sense that last year I run the OWC program, the Open Web Collective, which is an accelerator, and there indeed that's focus on Web3, chain agnostic. And there I saw indeed that there were some projects there that were built by Indian founders, and that was quite interesting, because also at that point I went looking into a little bit more, and then if you just look at the amount of commits on GitHub and you select on languages that are used in the Web3 space, and then the amount of commits from the Indian region is just exponentially growing. That means that there are a lot of technical people in India looking at Web3.
Okay.
Um,
But they speak English or Hindi? Like,
no, 99% speaks English, so that's not a big problem at all. But then when I saw that, and then somebody that I knew came up to me and said, "Hey, like we want to set up an accelerator separately in India. Do you want to help us out, because you have experience in running accelerator programs, in helping entrepreneurs scale up? Do you want to help?" And I'm like, "Sure, let me become an advisor, and then I will help you with setting up the program," which became eventually a Graviton accelerator. And when we're doing that, one of the biggest drivers for that accelerator was also like, hey, there are so many technical experts here in India that are very clever, can build something very well. But the challenge usually is business side of things and marketing side of things. Right? So the accelerator is also in curriculum set up to help those, say, Web 2 or Web 2.5 founders to find their way into the Web3 space, and how to build a business around that, and how to market those products into the market. Mostly what they're building is for an international audience, because India is still quite strict when it comes to anything crypto related. So quite often, yeah, they can just set up a legal entity in another jurisdiction and then start building. And so they can build, but they cannot use the product themselves in the markets where they are from. So quite often, one of the things you probably lived your whole life in India, but there's more outside of that when it comes to culture, when it comes to building product, and how other regions are going about with, say, just the use of credit cards or the use of cash or the use of certain services, right? And that's how I rolled into that accelerator and helped set up and also run the first cohort in the beginning of this year. And we're currently open for applications for the second cohort.
Oh, awesome. So how do they find product market fit if they're targeting Western markets and they never lived there?
Helping them do building the products in the sense that Web3 is a little bit of a special product, right? It's quite often the ideas from the developed in the Web3 space are coming to support the market itself. For instance, decentralized exchanges, right? That's something that is there to support the market itself, right? There is no outside forces that like, hey, you're building a decentralized exchange for the cryptocurrency users, right? And so that means that you're building something to scratch your own itch. Product market fit at that point is quite often there because you're surrounding yourself with the people that are already in the industry and are complaining about exactly the same thing, right?
Okay. So it's early adopters, right?
Yes. And the early adopters are already together, right? So you don't have to go out and validate your idea because you're smack in the middle of it.
Interesting.
Right? Yes. But that's also the problem with a lot of projects that will never work is that because they think they have a solution to something, but they don't really know the problem yet, but they just heard that somebody else is also working on that. A lot of projects don't make it. There's a lot of, and as I always call that like the mango on the blockchain, right? Like
Mango.
how many times already projects have tried to build a kind of like a supply chain tracking system where you can, when you go to the supermarket and you can scan a QR code on the mango and then it shows where you're coming from, where that mango is coming from,
Right.
which cannot be changed, right? Because something on the blockchain or most of the blockchains cannot be changed. So at that point, you know where that mango comes from. But the biggest problem there is that who guarantees me that the QR code on that mango is representing that mango, right? So there's still
the source could be fake, right? Yes.
Yeah, like you still have to trust somebody at that point that when they put on that QR code on that mango, that is indeed representing the hash on that blockchain.
I see.
And that's typical for a lot of kind of a real world product. Bringing that onto a blockchain. It's also relevant for art. It's also relevant for other things like real world assets, as in, for instance, property, right? Then you still have to trust the organizations that say, hey, this apartment building is now chopped up in different hashes, and here's the document to prove that. Then like you still have to prove that, right?
Fractional real estate.
Yes, so it is.
So it can't be totally decentralized then. It still needs somebody to trust, human.
For most of the things that are there in real life, yes. And then still even most of the decentralized finance products out there aren't decentralized at all. They usually at that point there is an organization that still, if they want to, could unplug servers or nodes or stop the service, right? Even the mining rigs that are maybe even the organization who started the chain still has like a significant amount of mining rigs. If they would stop it now, then the product will go down. So real decentralization is very hard to find.
Okay. Just one more question about your background. I see that you currently have a Mulana. Like, your
No, no.
co-founder. You want to
Yes.
talk about that too? Yes, that's the most
Yeah.
recent.
Yeah, Mulana is basically two things. One is we have Mulana VC, Mulana Capital, which is a early stage primary market VC fund. We invest small tickets into early stage companies, usually pre-seed or seed in the
Around
Web3
how much?
space. Yeah, and we're mostly looking at infrastructure, onboarding, off-ramping, security, decentralized, DPIN. So that's the DPIN stands for decentralized infrastructure for physical products. So that's a little bit the area that we're servicing with that VC fund. And
Yeah.
under the same branding, we have an investment management company that's going to set up 100% virtual asset funds here, licensed here in Hong Kong.
Oh, okay. Wow. Okay, interesting. Are there certain verticals that you apply Web3 to, or certain?
Yeah, mostly indeed infrastructure projects.
Web3 infrastructure, right? Yeah.
Yeah, Web3 infrastructure. If you go to website, you probably see a few projects that we supported when, yeah, like that are there to build. For instance, one of the projects that we're invested in is Metagravity. It developed a infrastructure for VR and the metaverse projects, where and you probably already did at one point a VR session somewhere, and then you can only do 30 people in one instance. They created an infrastructure, and they just recently also did a proof of concept with that, with 30,000 people in one instance.
Okay.
So
Wow.
that's 1,000x, right? That's going to be groundbreaking, especially for game developers, for event organizers, all those kind of things. So those kind of projects are the project that we're looking for with Mulana VC.
I see. And do you need the startup to have certain traction before you invest in them? Or
No,
what stage?
of course, if there is traction, always better, right? I always say a VC is in the business to reduce risk for
Yeah.
themselves also, right? So if there is traction, that's a reduced risk for an investor. But quite often we're still in the stages investing that there is no traction at all yet. So we have to believe in the technology, we have to believe in the founders, and also, of course, in the market. And those three key items, which is probably true for most of the investors, and especially when it comes to founders and the team, is this a team that make this happen? And I always say that I personally think that a founding team has to have 4 competences. One is business in general, right? Like somebody who knows how to build a business, somebody who knows how a profit and loss balance sheet works, and that kind of thing.
Yeah.
Then you have somebody who is good in business development, right? Sales, somebody who's not an introvert but knows how to start and sell products. The third one is technical, right? So a CTO style person who can build the technology that is required to build this product. And then the fourth one for me is always experience, a user experience person, because even if it's B2B, the user experience in my point of view is extremely important.
Yeah.
And that's something that you want in your core product, because that user experience person also in the beginning can help with the validation, with the direction, with the strategy of the product. And yeah, like it should be, in my point of view, a part of the co-founders, or at least from the founding team, that they, with that knowledge of building that product from the ground up, won't leave that easily. Like everything else around that, legal, HR, whatever, you can hire, right? Developers, you can hire. But those 4 competences, and that's usually not in one person. I can't remember if I've ever seen a project where those 4 competences was in one person. So usually could be 2, but usually 3.
Yeah, and I think what's special about you is you like for Grayscale, you were helping these companies build the user experience, right? Do you help your startups with building, or you mainly invest in teams that you select?
Mostly help do the selection in team that we invest. We also help them, but we usually don't help them on the part of user experience, because there's also, like, one of the reasons why I look at projects is see if they are focusing on user experience, and if they are, yeah, then we might be investing in them. So that means that my advice on that part will very quickly run out, because then they already have somebody within the team that knows way more from the product than I do. But as a VC, and I know a lot of them call that, but we definitely have additional value to the projects because of also the background of the partners involved and the team involved, but also the network that we bring to the table for those founders, which will definitely help them also with future fundraising rounds and that kind of thing.
Do you help them build the team then?
It could be that if they are saying, hey, we are looking to hire a certain role, then either we can also look in our network if they don't have candidates yet, but also it could be that they ask us to, hey, can you also talk to this person? We already had 2 interview rounds, and maybe you can also give your opinion about this person when it comes to working with us. At that point, also for me, is a culture fit would be very interesting to see, but also their background, right? For instance, if it's a CTO, does this person, beside of doing freelancing, also has run a team? Because if you're pre-seed or seed stage company and you're becoming on as a CTO, do you have experience in building a development team? If you could be a great builder, but if you've never really had a team of 10 developers or 15 developers under you and to manage them, yeah, then you very quickly run out of steam as a CTO, because yeah, you can be a great builder, but yeah, then you're getting challenges down the road when you're probably in a year from now and you're doing another round and you really get traction. Your team grows to, say, 15, 20 people.
Yeah.
All those, yeah, like all those, yeah, items we could help the founders also in yeah, selecting those kind of people.
In my experience, looking at a lot of tech startups, usually they don't have the user experience people, right? What we're like, is that normal, or do you?
It is normal, because I was actually on the deal flow meeting yesterday, and that project was raising a significant amount of capital, and they said, yeah, we're now still on the shoestring and we do this, do that, and then, but as soon as we close the round, we will start hiring developers. And then we're like, but your a big part of your product will be B2C, right? I have not heard you talk about
The
user
customer and the user,
experience.
yeah.
Yeah, are you going to hire a CXO, like a chief experience officer, right?
Yeah.
And they're like, yeah, no, definitely we're going to do that. But something like that, especially when a part of your business is B2C or like very heavily depending on user experience, then a CXO or a similar role, yeah, should be in your pitch deck, should be, or like the strategy to hire a person like that should be there, and make them a part of your either co-founding team or of the founding team.
In the VC world, do you think it's a norm yet to value user experience in a tech startup team?
It probably will be valued, and probably they will look at it, but they might not be as pressing towards it as I personally am.
Right, I see. Yeah, because you have the expertise, right? Have you seen any changes since COVID with the tech scene? Like, has market changed ever since like these few years?
Yeah,
Trends,
like, I think the market has changed in the sense that um, people accept remote products way more than before COVID,
right?
right? We all have used Zoom or Google Meets or whatever product that you prefer to use there for meetings that before COVID we would have thought to do on a computer with a screen and not in the same room, right? That also means that COVID helped the transition towards trusting products on the internet that you've never seen before.
Right.
In the Web3 space, to be honest, not a huge difference in the sense that a lot of that was already decentralized.
Right.
But what you now more and more see is that teams are decentralized and people are working more and more. Like quite often people ask me also now is like, hey, does Mulana invest only in Hong Kong based companies? I'm like, actually, there's no Hong Kong based company that we invest in. But then again, like even if the project that we are investing in, like where are they based, right? Is that where the legal entity is? Is that where the CEO founder is? Because probably 80% of them are not even in the same country. So that's also more and more accepted now than before COVID.
Are investors okay with it, knowing that the
Yeah,
founding team is all distributed and not in an office? Like,
yeah. As long as they produce and as long as they build a product in a good quality. Now, I have to say, I have a little caveat in there that depending on what you're building, that could work, right? For me personally, still, when it comes to designing work, I would like to have at least a few of the people within arm reach if I would be building something, because that will make the communication, or hey, can you check this quickly? If you now would do that online and we're like, hey, can you check this quickly? Then it could take a couple of hours. And on the other hand, a lot of technical people love working remote because
yeah.
there's nobody there that asks them, hey, can you check this quickly? Right?
Yes.
It's,
You'll
it's
work in the AMs, right?
yeah, but it's
Well,
so, yes. So that medal has two sides, right? I probably think that a lot of developers and designers like to work remote because there is nobody
yes.
hovering behind them
100%.
asking, can you check this or what are you doing? But on the other hand, yeah, it requires some adjustments of mostly, I have to say, from the product owner, from management. But I think personally that investors accept it way more. They have to. Most of the investments that we've done, we've never met before the investment, never met the team in person.
Oh, wow.
Right. Yeah. So it's just online meetings, due diligence, that kind of thing. I probably, because I quite often also go to different events and that kind of thing, probably met the most amount of founders in our portfolio team in person when I'm, for instance, flying to Dubai or go to Token 2049 or go to other events and yeah, meet up with the portfolio companies.
Okay, interesting. Wow. So yeah, investors became much more open-minded then. Like they don't need to see how big is your office, like how many people are sitting there, right? Yeah.
Yeah, I still remember it's from time that's probably 10 years ago, but there was a founder who used to be here in Hong Kong, then moved to the US. I think his startup was somewhere in, I think, Palo Alto or something else like that, and he was pitching a VC in San Francisco.
Mm.
And then the reason it could be a folklore, but like the reason why that investor said, I'm not going to invest in you is because you're too far away. And the driving distance between San Francisco and Palo Alto, you
Wow.
could
Really?
sneeze that. Yes, that's definitely not happening anymore. Yeah, it is that it's way more accepted to do calls like this because the teams are distributed anyway. But then again, of course, camera on, right? Just as a tip, is there any founders here that are looking for investment? Turn your camera on when you're on a call, right? People
Yeah.
want to see your face at that point. One red flag, and that's especially for the Web3 space. There are a lot of projects in there that only have like generated profile pictures,
NFC like heads.
NFT heads, and
JPEG.
don't turn their camera on during investor meetings. That's a huge orange,
Mm.
almost red flag for us, especially in the early stages. Yes.
Okay. So investors are okay that they're not worried that because people distribute it and you don't know where they are, people can just pack them and leave and take your money. No, no such worries.
No, there is a legal entity, but yeah, there is a KYC, right? Know your customer. There should be a data room with all the information also from the founders, like a passport scan, all those kind of things. Yes, that's probably more now than before, right? But then again, like before all this, and somebody would go to different VCs to pitch their product. Yeah, they're there physically and people can see them, but they're not also handing over their passport. They say, hey, this is really me, right? It could still be somebody there without a passport or undocumented or something else like that. Yeah. Most of the VCs are now quite comfortable in investing into people that they only see online. Of course, like at one point there will be a way that people are going to or have done an investment into a project where people who are looking very normal like this, but it turned out to be an AI or something else like that, right?
You need your scans and like thumbnail scans. Like,
no, the funny part was like, or funny, it's not funny, but I read an article about that there was a Chinese businessman was scammed out of, I think, $400,000 or something else like that, because a friend of him called him on WeChat with a AI that looked like the friend. And hey, can you wire me some money? Blocked, all those kind of things. And it was a very good friend of his, so he wired him some money, and that turned out to be a AI generated video call.
It looks so real.
Wow. Yeah. Of course, I have not heard about the details and that kind of thing, but yeah, I'm pretty sure there will be things there that will go that way, but also there still, like do your KYC, verify, do at least as much as possible. In hindsight would say, yeah, like we've done enough to like prevent scams. But on the other hand, like if you're investing into a scam, then have you done your due diligence right on the market? And because quite often, if it's a great idea, then probably the return on investment for the founders would be way higher if they didn't scam. So if you really have a great idea and you can just build it, yeah, then why not, right? So yeah, it's, to be honest, I always say there are different kind of VCs, and not all the VCs are alike, and most of the scams are from VCs that have not done their due diligence right, aren't good at due diligence.
It was surprising that Sequoia invested in FTX, right? And they're supposed to be the largest and most experienced VC.
Yeah, but that's also a combination of FOMO and everybody else is in, and like they, in my point of view, didn't start out as a scam, right? They just made poor decisions along the way that they shouldn't have done. But it is a challenge. There are a lot of course, the question is, when does a scam start and where does it end, and where does a normal company start, and where are you going to try to fake it until you make it and it becomes a scam? It is a little bit the challenge there, because there are so many projects out there that eventually raised capital on the wrong data or on the wrong metrics, and then maybe there are even bigger projects out there that made it and never came to light because they just returned multiple X's for an investor.
Okay, let's go back to the topic on product market fit. Do you have any stories from all the startups that you've seen in your whole career? Any interesting product market fit stories, or especially if they go to foreign markets?
Yeah, one of the things that at one point we were building with Grayscale, we were building a website for a local Hong Kong conglomerate, part of a huge group, and we had multiple meetings with management, and then just when it comes to culture, right, to get that client in, we were talking to a management trainee that was basically the project leader from their side. And then I said, hey, you've chosen us now to start this project. We have a kickoff meeting. We really want the general manager in that kickoff meeting because we want to see strategy wise, which direction do they want to go into, all those kind of things. And it took me probably around 4 phone calls and 7 emails, and totally probably 2.5 to 3 hours in time to convince and to give that management trainee enough information for them to be comfortable to invite the general manager to that meeting. Because cultural wise, there was that general manager would say after the meeting, like, why did you get me into this meeting? This was the waste of my time.
Right.
Right. So cultural wise, when it comes to product fit, product market fit, or like even from this side, there's only one way to know that, and that's having people on the floor or on the ground, foot on the floors in that area that know the dynamics and the culture, right? Something similar for that same project was also that we suggested a design which had multiple hexagons that was going over on that website. And then, we just made hexagons. But then we very quickly got the feedback like, hey, like hexagon is nice, but make the corners of that hexagon rounded, because the sharp corners of hexagon is bad feng shui.
Well, also for websites?
Also for websites, obviously.
I thought it was only like physical buildings and interior furniture.
Okay. Yeah, correct. But so that was like, okay, and we did that, of course. But then again, I'm also very aware that here in Hong Kong we have the Bank of China building, which has a lot of sharp corners, right? But then feng shui compensates that with a lion and some water and in front of the door and that kind of things. Yes, it is. It can be something challenging if you build a product for an area that you've never been. Like also one of the most interesting examples that I quite often say and talk about is that just imagine in the US to somebody in the US saying, hey, like you're using Uber, right? Yes. Like, why do you? Yeah, it's easy, convenient. Don't have to, don't have to get money and can just get into cab. But if you're at that point thinking, okay, there are markets here in Asia, Southeast Asia, where most of the people don't have credit cards.
Yeah.
But Uber still wants to get market share, right? Like, how do you do that? Yeah. One of the most obvious things is cash, right? But if you're just building your product with everything relevant, what you have as a reference is the US, then that product, if you would launch that in, say, for instance, India, that would not work because the Indians don't have a credit card. How are you going to pay for your Uber then? Then you have to build something additional for that localization part, which supports cash. And there are some other bigger examples there, but that's one of the most telling examples when it comes to localization. Also, one of the things is that language inside of your app, right? Yes, although a lot of people speak English, localization in the local language will increase your adoption way more than if you just keep it in English. Yeah. Even if it's just about, like for me personally, I don't mind English. My operating systems are, although I'm native Dutch, all my operating systems already when I was growing up in the Netherlands were also all in English. So for me, it's not a big issue, but especially when you go beyond your early adopters, the local language is extremely important.
Yeah, especially like in Hong Kong and China, it's a completely different system, right? Like the Chinese language. And it will affect your design as well.
Yeah, it definitely affects your design. It definitely affects your... One of the things, for instance, is that here in Hong Kong, of course, we have Uber here, but we also have a Hong Kong taxi app. Right? And one of the big differences is that I don't know where Hong Kong taxi app got their location information from, but everything that I type in English as locations quite often is not found on the Hong Kong taxi app. So I have to go to, for instance, the address, or but not like the building name. Like in Hong Kong, for instance, also in Hong Kong, a lot of the navigation is done by building names, not by street address, the street name and the building number, right? The house number. No, it's usually IFC or a Bank of China or Pacific Place. That also means that people will reference that if they start typing in the location that they want to go to inside of an app. Probably Hong Kong Taxi app is better organized for the Chinese characters for that and not the English version of that, but okay. And then also in 9 times of 10, if you book a taxi on the Hong Kong Taxi app, the taxi driver will call you on your mobile phone just to confirm and to be sure that where you want to go. Right. While if you use Uber, just like you book your Uber, that you're connected and you put your phone in your pocket and you walk or you go and wait until the Uber arrives. Right. So that's an additional step. So that's also a little bit of a culture thing, because that's also what taxi drivers are used to. Right.
They want to make sure you're there when they come.
They want to make sure you're there and you don't, because it's how people used to book a taxi. Was they just called a taxi dispatcher and then they would say, okay, there will be a taxi on the way, and then that driver would still call the person like, hey, are you really there? Right. So that's also a culture thing, but also very interesting when Uber left mainland China. And then you had, of course, Didi in mainland China and Uber here in Hong Kong. They had a deal that as soon as you're starting to use the app in a different location, it would switch also language. I was not able to use Didi in English language here in Hong Kong.
Oh.
It would automatically switch to the Chinese character version.
Traditional Chinese.
But if I would go over the border here to mainland China, then at that point, and I would open up the Didi app, I would have the English version.
Why is it not in simplified Chinese then?
Because they have an English version, of course, from the app. And if you are in mainland China, you can just use the English version of the app and also the simplified version, right? You could select language. But as soon as you geographically go into Hong Kong, one of the deals was that Didi would not supply their services in English to people in Hong Kong, because that would hurt the Ubers in Hong Kong, because they were mostly servicing the English-speaking clients here in Hong Kong, right? That was part of the deal, right?
You have to switch to Uber then when you come to Hong Kong.
Yes, right. I think now that deal is over, and now you can use Didi in English also here in Hong Kong. But there was a time that, to a certain amount of time, that they did when they were handing things over, and Uber became a shareholder in Didi, as far as I know. They had that in their deal terms, that was set up. So also there is a lot of differences, and as you probably also know, also start realizing for people who are building products for Asia, that is Hong Kong China, is China Hong Kong? No, it's different and it's complicated, right? It's just about language. I was explaining this earlier this week. Yes, like Cantonese is a language, right? Probably the simplest difference between Portuguese and Spanish, right? Like there's a huge difference in language there. So in Hong Kong and a lot of mainland area around that, people speak originally Cantonese. In mainland China part of that Cantonese speaking, many years ago, the local government implemented simplified characters. Hong Kong was never part of that, so Hong Kong uses traditional characters. But so Cantonese traditional characters in Hong Kong, Cantonese simplified characters in the Canton region in mainland China, right? In the Canton region. But then if you go to Taiwan, you have traditional characters,
but
with Mandarin.
Yes.
right? And for somebody who's never been here or has no clue, like that's extremely complicated because they like how does that work? So that's localization comes in play. Like we always probably all have an opinion or an assessment or of a different country, but if you really live in a country for a certain amount of time, you really start noticing the subtle differences, and then that will still make or break your product launch in that area, because then it really shows that you understand that region.
So what's your advice on what's the biggest mistakes to avoid when going to another region? Like, how do you do that, right? If you've never been to the country, what do you do?
Yeah, research the heck out of it, get local experience, but not just a 2 weeks visit, right? No, find people that like UX designers, for instance, in that area that are good, that know the culture very well, and hire them, right?
Right.
Quite often, what is that also on a larger scale, big corporations, they would come, say, 20 years ago to mainland China with 200 Westerners to set up their business there. If you look at now, it's still the same company, same branding, but you probably wouldn't find any Westerners anymore in that company, right?
Yeah.
They're all localized. Similar for if you want to launch a product in a certain area, get local expertise, and not as a consultant, but like really put them in managerial positions that know the region very well, and also have done product launches before, because that's extremely important.
So do you think, especially with companies from the West coming over to Asia, is it more important to maintain the global brand or experience, or just let the local team run with it and customize the hell out of it? Like, how do you strike the balance, right?
Yeah, that's a good question, and it is a balance, right? Because you also, as a global brand, don't want to lose your identity, right? And not that people like, I didn't know that this is the same company, right? Like there's no clear-cut answer to that question, right? It really, the first reaction to the question is it depends, right? And which is an annoying way of an answer, but it really does, because it really depends on the curb appeal of a product that's already there or not. Is the brand name worldwide already known, right? Which market inside of that regional area that you want to start growing into and expanding into? What kind of services are you providing? What kind of audience are you targeting? Probably if you're having a product, for instance, that's focused on youth, and you find out that the youth is very, I wouldn't say naturalistic, but very regionally aware, then you might want to brand yourself as a local brand, but then, for instance, buy and then your international brand, right?
Okay.
Quite often also see if there is already a product out there that does something similar and is doing well. You might want to acquire them, because that will definitely help you. But then still, it also, most of the acquisitions don't result in the things that were expected to return in, right? Make or buy decisions can be made there too, but it's not easy. If it was easy, then we just had a clear answer. It still depends, but one of the key things in what I said also earlier is language. Have the local language, but also be aware of the local customs that, for instance, cash in a booking app, even if it's just a food app or something else.
Mm. It used to be the world was not as connected, where when companies go global, it used to be more larger companies with a lot of budget, right? But now with AI and everything so connected, have you seen any changes? Can like a two-person company go to a foreign market easier nowadays, or not?
Yeah, probably. Technically, yes. I'm still waiting for the one-person $1 billion company, right?
Everything automated, right?
Everything automated. It's Yeah, I wouldn't be highly surprised if that would happen at one point. It would be probably a very clever person anyway, and they probably would have a lot of freelancers around him. But yeah, technically already, especially in the Web3 space, yeah, if you just have a team of 10 people, yeah, you could build something for an international market, and then also scale that up. So yeah, I definitely see that when it comes to early adopters, people have no problem in stepping over some of the challenges that would occur when you're looking for scale up. But yeah, a lot of people are using decentralized exchanges, and I'm pretty sure most of the decentralized exchanges are not focused on certain geographical areas. But then again, probably most of the people who have cryptocurrencies have not used a decentralized exchange yet, or wouldn't even know how to use it. I think localization comes with mass adoption. When it comes to early adopters, yeah, they will be able to, yeah, forgive you for challenges when it comes to localization.
Early adopters are really patient people.
For instance, one or the other thing, I'm getting back to the Web3 space there, but in America, it's very accepted to use credit cards, right? And in other countries, it's very accepted to use cash.
Yeah.
But for instance, if you're doing a payment provider, or if you're doing an on-ramping for exchanges, then yeah, you have to have the local, for instance, bank wire services. For instance, in the Netherlands, that's Ideal. Ideal is the bank transfer payment provider, right? If you are a service that wants to get people to use your service by them wiring you money, then yeah, you can ask them to wire money to a bank in the UK that is going to, but that's a lot of cost, but also a lot of hassle. Like, why would somebody from the Netherlands wire money to the UK, right? If you incorporate into your product that local banking system, and they can just use that in 1 or 2 clicks to pay or to transfer money from their local bank account to their local payment provider, then there is less friction and there's more trust there. So also that's also very important when it comes to in digital products.
So last question, what are some success cases you found, or in terms of product market fit?
Also, that's a good question, because if it's a success case, you don't realize it's a success case, right? Because it's just there and you're using it, right? 99% of design is invisible. If something is a success case, it doesn't stand out as a success case because it's just there, and it's logical that it's there. So when it comes to success cases, probably, yeah, you have to, when you look at the growing ones, then
any startups that you help, like they struggle to find product market fit and they finally found it, and why that happened, or what they did right to make that happen?
Technically, most of the startups struggle to find product market fit, right? Also, there it's quite often a challenge for them, but there aren't many startups that I've seen that never struggled to get product market fit.
Why is it so difficult, you think?
Because most of the founders have a solution and try to find a problem around it.
Okay, it's like the other way around.
Yeah, and even if they have the right mindset and they find a problem and they're looking for a technical solution to solve that problem, doesn't mean that the market is big enough, or doesn't mean that the problem there is large enough to support the business, or maybe even at that point have enough runway to actually execute that, right? Or there may be a bigger, more funded, more war chests, other entity comes in and wipes you off the planet. It is still, I've seen a lot of founders, also as an investor, that comes to the table, and then I ask them, like, how many like potential clients have you actually interviewed? Not with, we have this problem or we have this solution, would you buy it? but is this a problem for you?
Yes.
And how are you currently solve it?
Mm.
And if money was no object, like how would you solve it? If you have the magic wand, like how would you not even, hey, random user that I'm talking to right now, if you had a magic wand, how would you solve this, right? The amount of times that I've said to people, please read 4-Step to Epiphany from Steve Blanks, right? Just read it. Spend a day or two reading that book and implement that into your journey. And then still people will like, I'm going to build this app and okay.
Right, it's scissor happy. It's like code happy. Like just jump right into building before they know what to build.
Yes, yes,
Is
yes.
that not the startup education or
It's usually the enthusiastic way of somebody who's never been there before. And it's just like and I admire them for the enthusiasm and I admire them for really wanting to build something. The problem only is that, hey, I'm pointing you now to that direction. Are you coachable or not? And if they still at that point go to the other side and start building it, I'm like, okay, then you're not yet on the point that you're coachable. It might be that you're coachable in 2 years from now, but at this point, yeah, your enthusiasm still takes over from common sense.
yeah.
Yeah, but that's fine because
Don't
those
burn all our money
people
for
learn
it
from
by
that.
building, right? Yes.
And the only reason why I know that is because I've been there, right? I've learned from that. Like
Yeah.
I was at a pitching event earlier last month, and I also said I sometimes just feel like that older gentleman in your street where you were playing as a kid that started shouting, "Don't play on the street, kids, because there are cars here and you will get run over." And you as a kid, old man, no, right? Do not play on the street. And there are kids getting hit by cars and yeah, they have to go to the hospital and that kind of thing, right? It is a little bit like, yeah.
That's a good analogy.
Yeah, it's a lot of ideas. Ideas are cheap. Execution is what brings things to the table, but smart execution is something totally different. And that's usually also what I'm looking for, smart execution, that people, that if I ask a founder, hey, but what about XYZ? And then there's like, we thought about it. We know that, great question, but this. You should know your market. You should know your user. Say it's now Saturday morning, 10 a.m., right? You should know exactly what your user is doing right now. Where they are, in what stage they are, how much money in their pocket do they have, what their mindset is, and that kind of thing. You should be able to know your customer before you start building 100%. Yes.
So what was to summarize, like what's the one takeaway you want the audience to learn from you?
Validate. Please validate. And not in the sense of we're going to build this product, do you want to buy it? But is this a problem? And
How many users you need to hear that they validated before they'll convince you to invest in their startup?
when I'm teaching, I say to my students, I give them an arbitrary number of 150, right? But then very quickly after that, I would say, as soon as you start interviewing somebody, you have 15 questions. And if they answer already 5 questions, and you will be able to, with an educated guess, know where this interview will be going, you're probably on the point that you have interviewed enough people. Right? And do it in person. So quality over quantity.
Right.
We just started with the academic year, and one of the student teams that I'm working with, they made a questionnaire, right? A survey, and
Just
then
send it out.
and then to validate their business idea, right? And one of the question was, would you buy this product, and what would you pay for it?
Yeah.
Right. So then at that point, I said to him, like, okay, let's turn around. Would you buy a mobile phone? Yes. Okay. What would you want to pay for the mobile phone? $100, $200, $500, $1,000. Now I want to pay $100. Okay. What did you pay for your phone? Yeah, $800, $900, right? And convert it into US. And I'm like, okay, but now your survey says 100, while the user actually paid $900 or $1,000, right? So there is discrepancy in your data. Like, it's good, right? You cannot ask these kind of questions in the very early stage when you start validating a product.
Okay. Awesome. Thank you so much, Jeffrey. I love doing these interviews because I learn so much more about my friends than a normal conversation, right? So if the audience wants to get in touch with you, is there like an email or site? Maybe you can leave it with me and we could put on the podcast.
You can probably find me on LinkedIn. You can also find me on Twitter. And shamelessly plug, I also have a podcast about startup lessons learned called
Awesome.
Mea Culpa, Startup Lessons Learned. I will also send you the link for that.
Okay, awesome. Thank you, Jeffrey.
Thank you.